Happy Wednesday, guys. How are y'all doing today? This is Sheila with Sheila's One Stop Coaching Channel, where every Wednesday and Friday I put out content and videos about my writing journey. I share the books that I've wrote. I've been reading out of them on both days. If this is the first time you've ever been here, I want to say welcome. And if you are a subscriber, I want to say thank you. But if you're not a subscriber, I'd like for you to just take a minute, subscribe to my channel, like it, share it, comment on it, and help me get this content out there, because it's great content, guys. It really is. It's just a learning journey for me, and I've just been sharing things that I've learned over the last year or two writing my books and things. And so I have wrote 2 books. I have wrote a nonfiction memoir, Life After the Mistake, and I have been reading out of this book on Wednesdays. We will read out of it in just a few minutes. And I have started doing like some devotionals. The first one is How to Be Prosperous. I've actually been reading out of it on Fridays. And I am working on another devotional right now that's called How to Be Intentional with Your Words. But I'm also writing a little short read that will be just ebook only. It'll just be in ebook form. But as soon as it is published and ready, I will be sharing a link that you can look at it. As of right now, I'm thinking that it will only be $4.99. But it definitely won't be no more than $6.99. But I've just got to wait until I get completely through with it, get through editing it and proofreading it and getting it laid out. My editor, proofreader / person that does my design and layout, in the KDP thing. I've just got to see what I was going to go into it and see if I'm going to have to go up a little bit on it. But as of right now, it'll just be an ebook. I'm not planning on, publishing it or making it a paperback or making it available paperback, because this is mainly going to be just tips on tips that I learned. It's not necessarily how to write a book or how to write your first book. It's mainly just tips that I learned while I was writing my first book. And, I've learned some things. I did, and I want to share them. And it's not going to cost a whole lot. It'll just be easy to download, because, a lot of people's not going to want a paperback book for something like that. I know while I was writing my book, I downloaded several writing tip books for like $4.99, $3.99, some a little bit higher, maybe $5.99. But I just learned from them, and I read the mistakes they made, and they were just helping me not to make those same mistakes. So that's what the little book is going to be about. But it is also going to be in the category of the Be Devotionals, because my plan is to have 12 of these as of right now. My plan is to have 12 of these, hopefully in the next couple of years. And if I do, maybe one day I will sell them as a volume, as a bundle, and you'll get a 12-month devotional broke down into 30 to 31 days. But as of right now, they will all be pretty much 31 days, 30 to 31 day devotionals. But I did learn some things while I was writing this book. But I'm in the valley of decision about what I'm going to title the little short read. It'll be like, so you want to be a writer, and I'm going to use the BEE with hopefully the same B or something like this B is going to have a pencil in their hand and going to have a tablet under them writing, and so just sharing those kind of things with y'all today. Today is January the 20th, 2021. Today is Inauguration Day. Our country is fixing to see a big, big shift. But guys, I cannot express it enough. We as the church and we as the children of God have got to stay focused. We've got to stay strong because the world will be looking at us and they will be looking to us. And hopefully the backsliders, the sinners, the ungodly, they will come to God and they will make things right before this world ends. You know, the signs of the time are pointing to his returning. But I often say, you know, even in the book of Acts over 2,000 years ago, when Jesus Christ died and rose again on the cross, that kind of began the last days. You know, the last days. Because it says in the last day, I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Well, the sons and daughters of God have been prophesying since the Bible days. In the New Testament, Paul himself, the one that was Saul, then came to Apostle Paul, he was addressing the church and he was talking about his women. He was talking about the women in the ministry, telling them to accept them and how to treat them and how to respect them as women of God that worked and labored in the kingdom with him. So really that's been going on since then, you know. And he's been pouring out his spirit on all flesh. And I know this is kind of off the beaten path of Wednesday's thing, and I will read this. But I told my husband, I said, you know, America is not but about 250 years old. The country of America, the United States, you know, America, when Columbus found America, is about 254 years old. And what we are seeing now in America, in the United States, things like this has been going on in other countries for years. There's been other countries that have been divided. They've had leaders that were communists. They had leaders that had a rod, you know, had an iron thumb, so to speak, and would kill their people if they didn't come under their rule. You know, the kind of stuff that we are seeing in America now, these things have been going on in other countries already. So why is it all of a sudden America is saying, oh, God's fixing to come back. You know, Jesus is coming back. This world's fixing to be over. We're not the only country, people. We are not the only country. And the things that we are seeing now that we are calling the end time and the last days, that kind of stuff has been going on in other countries for years. Earthquakes and wars and rumors of wars and hurricanes and tsunamis and stuff like that over in the other countries, and in Iran and Iraq, and Israel has been fighting. That little bitty country has been fighting for 150, 200 years. So why is it all of a sudden, because it's happening to America, oh, Jesus is coming back now? We don't know. We really don't know. I would imagine the other countries have been saying the same thing for 100 years. I imagine during the Holocaust, they were probably saying Jesus is fixing to come back because this is the stuff that he talked about in the Bible. You know, I imagine in World War I and World War II, they were probably saying it then, Jesus is fixing to come back. Because look around us, there's war and there's rumors of wars, and we're fighting and devouring and we're fighting each other. You know, when the South was against the North and the North against the South in our own country. I imagine people were saying then, he's fixing to come back. And I'm not saying that he's not fixing to come back. But I think about those kind of things, you know. We're not the only country in this world. We're not the only country. But there is one thing, though. The pandemic affected the globe. It was a global pandemic. So that is probably one of the things that I would say points more to his returning, is when it is something that's global. You know, that it affected the whole world. You know, but what we got going on here with the presidents fighting and the Democrat and Republicans against one another and things like that, God, that's been going on for years. You know, and evil and wickedness in high places. That's been going on in other countries for years. You know, Hitler and the one that we just destroyed or shot. I can't think of his name. Here, maybe a year or two ago. You know, they while President Trump was president, they got a missile and took him out. You know, and I want to thank the man that was ruling during the Desert Storm. I think they eventually got him. You know, so this is nothing new. We're not fighting nothing new. It's just new to us because we have never faced it. So I just encourage you today to understand and remember that we're not the only country. We're not the only people on this earth, and we're not the only people that are sold out to God. There are people all over this world that are sold out to the true living God. I'm going to go ahead and read. We are in part 2. There's part 1, part 2, and part 3. And we have been in part 2 called A Different Set of Eyes. And so this week we are going to read The Very Act. The Very Act. And I wrote this as if I was that woman that was caught in the very act. You know, I wrote it as if she was the one that was speaking. You know, and so I was able to get into that character with her. I was able to relay what I feel like she was feeling as a woman. What was happening? My half-naked body was being dragged down the street. We have caught you, you adulteress. Then right in the middle here we have and I wish I would show it right. Yeah, right here we have a scripture. I'm going to read that. This was in John 8, 3 and 4. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. I could hear their statements. Now this is the woman. Now we're back to the woman that was caught in the very act of adultery. It happened so fast, my mind couldn't grasp the actions that were taking place. I just knew that the man that was participating in this same act was fading behind me as they dragged me down the street. There was no way I could get away from them. I was outnumbered. They were men and I was a woman. It felt like my heart was going to beat out of my chest. There I was, sitting in the presence of Jesus. Where was my lover? Surely they grabbed him too. Maybe they were letting him put on his clothes. My eyes couldn't look up. My face was burning as I was trying to cover the parts of my body that were so shamefully showing. It wasn't just Jesus. There were other people around him. They brought me into the temple where Jesus was teaching. Their accusations burned in my ears. We caught her in the very act. Now I want to read John 8, same chapter. Now I'm going to read verses 5 and 6 now. This is what they were saying to Jesus. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? That this they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. See this right here, guys? That's the finger of Jesus writing in the sand. This is the woman caught in the very act of adultery. And when she gets through, and while he's writing, the men had to walk away. You know, when he said, hey, any of you that have never sinned, cast the first stone, they couldn't do it. They had to walk away. Now that's what I chose that to be. But now you can choose it to be whatever you want to be. It can be Jesus wrote in the sand and he walked away. It could be the woman walking away. You know, Jesus said, go and sin no more. So she gets up and she walks away. But that's where that that finger in the sand, come from that scripture. They caught her in the very act of adultery. This is an ungodly activity that she participates in often. What will you do about this, Jesus? They were asking Jesus to make me pay for my wrongs. They had brought their stones with them because the law stated a person was to be stoned to death for this kind of sin. I wondered again about the man I was with, but fear had me silenced. The tension was unbearable. The lump in my throat was causing me to take short breaths. Was this my fate? Was all my sinful life about to unfold before everyone? Was I going to die today? The law said I would. The accusers wanted me dead. Then he bent over, reaching out his hand. Was he about to throw the first stone? But then Jesus began to write in the sand. It was as if he didn't hear them. While Jesus continued to write on the ground, they continued asking him, Jesus, doesn't the law say she should be stoned to death? He had to have heard my heart's cry, even though I spoke no words as they accused me. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live this way anymore. This seemed to be my fate. Nobody had ever reached out to me to tell me life could be different than the one I was living. Why did I seek comfort in those sinful ways? When I was participating in these shameful acts, my mind never contemplated my wrongdoing. For just that moment in time, I felt fulfilled. Someone needed me. Someone was responding to me, even if it wasn't in the right way. There was an empty place in my soul, a place that yearned for real love, a love that felt safe and complete. Maybe you are there now, or you have been in that place that you felt so empty, that to die would be a comfort to you. No woman wants to feel unwanted, unloved, or undesirable. As I read my story in the Holy Bible, there was so much behind the scenes that was not revealed that day. My accusers didn't care about my story. They weren't even worried about my failure. It was all about trying to force Jesus to obey the law of Moses. It was about being right and law over love. Jesus knew their hearts. He knew my heart. It was clear that I was guilty. Everyone pointed to my execution. Even now, as I see my story in writing, the feelings of gratitude still flood my soul. Jesus wrote in the sand that day. The Bible does not record what was written by that very finger of our Messiah. But I believe he wrote the sins of those accusers that day for all to see. When he spoke the words, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone," each person walked away one by one. My life flashed before my eyes. I knew that I was getting a second chance. Jesus could have stoned me that day because truly he had committed no sin. Jesus was not trying to impress anyone. He turned to me and simply asked, where were my accusers? Where were the people that condemned me? I replied, there are none. And he said, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Oh my goodness. I'm going to go ahead and finish reading it because it ain't but just a little bit of a page. Man, I hate that that blares like that. My search for love in all the wrong places had ended that day. Forgiveness had been granted to me, and Jesus showed his unfailing love to me. He showed me his reason for existing. I mattered to him, which was truly all my soul had ever longed for. If I could speak into your heart today, I would tell you that Jesus is for you. That you're his number one priority. He wants to be your all in all. He wants to be your reason to get up each day. to face every day with assurance, knowing that He loves you more than any mortal could comprehend. My life was forever changed on that shameful day. Now, this is the woman caught in the very act of adultery. That is, in a sense, she's the character writing this chapter. I will never go back to that lifestyle again. He thought I was worth saving. He went the way of the cross for all mankind, not just for the rich, not just for the well-to-do people, not even just for the good people, but for all, for you, for me. My name was not mentioned either, but just like the Samaritan woman at the well, you will read our stories in the most read book in the world. To me, that is a sure sign that He knows that we as humans are prone to sin. We have a sinful nature. Many stories have been displayed in the Bible or for a greater purpose. I believe mostly to show how merciful, loving, and forgiving our Savior is. Yours truly, the adulterous woman. And I think that I wrote here, the footsteps in the sand on the front of this book are for everyone who took a leap of faith to walk away from sin and toward a new life. So that's, that's what I feel like, that's what I see is I'm getting up. He's forgiven me, and He's gave me a second chance, and I'm walking away. So guys, next week we will start the road to new beginnings. It's just a little intersection here. It's a picture of me and my husband at our church, and it starts, and I will address that a little bit more next week. But anyway, I'm going to get off here today, but I will be back Friday with another day of reading out of How to Be Prosperous. And I pray with you. I pray for my subscribers. I pray for my viewers. I pray God bless you today, be with you. And I encourage you, if you have any breath at all, pray and ask God to help us today in our nation. And may God have mercy on us and let the church be ready. I'll see you later, guys.